In Saskatoon Court of Queen's Bench this week, I've been following the trial of Clint James McLaughlin. He's facing 17 gun charges involving 4 rifles, 2 shotguns, and 2 handguns. But the guns were found on a different man named Noel Harder. That name might sound familiar because he's the drug trafficker who became a police agent in the Project for SETI gun and drug investigation back in 2014. Police had been closely watching both Harder and McLaughlin, who court heard were members of the Fallen Saints Motorcycle Club. In March of 2014, Harder testified that McLaughlin asked him to take a bunch of guns from his garage because he was worried that the police would find them. Harder was arrested later that day, but he struck a deal with police. He agreed to work with them in exchange for charges being dropped. He later revealed the guns came from McLaughlin, but McLaughlin testified the guns weren't his. McLaughlin is currently serving a 6-year prison sentence for assaulting and kidnapping his ex-fiancée, Mariana Kirkogna. It was a high-profile case that actually happened just months after these gun allegations in 2014. The trial is adjourned for closing arguments. You might remember the case of Carol King. She's the woman from Newfoundland who lived near Herschel and went missing in August 2011. Her body was found 3 weeks later on an isolated farmyard just north of town. Last summer, Joseph David Casey was charged with first-degree murder. Now, police had said he was always a person of interest in the case, but they wouldn't say why it took so long to lay charges. Preliminary hearings are used to determine if there's enough evidence to send a case to trial, and they're usually subject to a publication ban, which means we can't report on them. The hearing is expected to continue next week. You might remember the case of Alvin Patrick Jr. Nastis. He was convicted by a jury of second-degree murder. Well, last week he was sentenced to life in prison with no chance of parole for 10 years. It's the mandatory minimum sentence for second-degree murder, even though the Crown had argued for a parole ineligibility of 14 years. Nastis stabbed 44-year-old Billy Johnston in the heart during a standoff in the parking lot of the Northwoods Inn on Ottawa Drive back in 2015. For more detailed accounts of these stories and more, head to the StarPhoenix.com.